How's it going, everyone? I am Dylan. This is All You Can Board, and it is time to review a couple new Marvel Champions hero packs. We got 2 releases on the same day, which is going to be a trend going forward, and so that means we got Ironheart and Nova. So we're going to be doing Ironheart today. Nova will be coming out next, so if you're looking for that one, keep an eye out. Ironheart is interesting because when I came into both these packs, I actually thought I was going to be more excited or I was more excited for Nova, and I thought I was going to enjoy Nova more out of the 2 packs I was going to be playing. And after having played with them all weekend, I actually really prefer Ironheart. I really love the Ironheart gameplay. I guess I should have expected that because I loved the Iron Man gameplay so much and sort of building up that hero, and Ironheart builds up the hero in a very different way. But there's nothing quite as satisfying as when you build up Ironheart, get her super powered up, and all her abilities are able to take place, and then you're just completely taking control of the battlefield. So I really enjoy this hero. Let's dive in and we'll talk about all the things I like and what I find unique about it. So right off the bat, we have 3 different hero / alter ego cards, which is obviously probably the most unique thing about Ironheart. So we're going to start off with her version 1. We'll start with the alter ego side. The alter ego sides are fairly consistent throughout. There's just some minor differences. So is Riri Williams, of course, recovery 3, hand size of 6, hit points of 10. Begin the game with this card. Set your other identities aside. So you'll always start here. The other identities have to be earned. Child Prodigy is the ability. Actions: spend a mind resource to place 1 progress counter on Riri Williams. This is what you're trying to do with Ironheart to get her to her full potential. You need to be getting progress counters as efficiently as possible onto this card, so that after, as you'll see when we get to the hero side, you can spend 6 of those counters to upgrade to the next version of the suit. The more you upgrade, the more you're going to be able to do with this card. So yes, it's only 1 progress counter, but often anytime you spend in Alter Ego, you're going to want to use this action to get the extra progress counter. If you can do it twice, that would be fantastic. Usually you probably can. It is limited once per round, so you'd have to use it the turn you flip and then use it again the next turn. But it is going to help you get towards that 6 and have it snowball so that Ironheart can reach her full potential and start to really unlock a lot of abilities. So that is the Alter Ego. Let's go into the first hero side, which is Champion version 1. The other trait is Champion. 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. Hit points of 10, hand size of 4. So you are much more limited when you start the game compared to where you will likely end it in version 3. Even version 2 is more manageable. It's kind of where you expect the hero side to be, where you'll only lose 1 to the hand size. But starting with 4 is definitely going to limit you. Ironheart does have a slower start. You are going to feel a little bit weaker at the beginning. If you just base your experience of Ironheart off of the beginning of the game, or you don't really have a chance to kind of snowball and get to her more powerful levels, you might think, oh, Ironheart's actually not that great of a hero. But it is sort of just the steps you need to take to get to the more exciting and the more powerful versions of Ironheart. So the ability here is pretty simple. It's level up, remove 6 progress counters from Ironheart, ready her, and swap her for version 2 Ironheart. So you're able to sort of do something with her, and then like one of her basic abilities, and then use this action to ready her and switch to version 2 and get another turn. So the turn that you upgrade, no matter if you're going from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, is always going to feel like a little bit extra powerful because of this extra readying that you're doing. Just make sure you utilize that, and don't forget to take advantage of using a basic ability or something beforehand. So that's basically it for level 1. Let's go into level 2. The alter ego side changes just ever so slightly to spend a mind resource or 2 resources of any type to place 1 progress counter on Riri Williams. So it just makes it a little bit easier to be able to get these progress counters in case you're short on mind resources. Yes, you have to spend 2 then, but it just gives you some more flexibility to sort of race to the finish here. Everything else on this card is basically the same. The level 2 of the hero side, however, is upgraded. So now it's 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. And the level up is remove 6 progress counters from Ironheart, ready her, give her a tough status card, and swap her with version 3. So now not only do you get the readying, you also get a tough status card, and of course you go to level 3, which is her most powerful level. So the turn that you make this switch is usually a really powerful turn, like from 2 to 3 is what I'm saying. That to me was the sort of the turning point in a lot of the games I've had where, if I was starting to feel like things were out of control, or I was, struggling to keep up with whatever the villain was doing. The turn that I was able to use level 2, use the action, ready her, use level 3, and also have that tough status card to protect me going forward, that tends to be a really strong turn and kind of set you up for success. If you're able to get there early, you're probably going to have a really successful game with Ironheart. And then finally we have level 3. So level 3 on the back says, actions, spend 1 resource of any type to place 1 progress counter on Riri Williams. You might be wondering, why do I need progress counters if I've leveled up to the max level? Well, there is a really good reason, and that's because if we go to the final form, version 3, not only do you now have 3 thwart to attack, 3 defense, you have maximum efficiency, which is a hero action. Remove 1 progress counter from Ironheart to deal 2 damage to an enemy. Now, you should also note that you do not have to exhaust Ironheart to do this, which means that if you're able to find a way to get a whole bunch of progress counters onto her, you can end up doing, there was turns where I had 4 progress counters on her, and I'm doing an extra 8 damage just from using this action multiple times. So really, really strong hero side. I love that it keeps a reason for progress counters to be in the game, so it doesn't kill a whole bunch of cards that are in her deck, and it really feels super powerful to be able to add those progress counters. You're still seeking them out. You still have a way to add them based on the alter ego side. All around, getting to that final form of Ironheart is one of the more satisfying moments I've had in Marvel Champions, probably in the last year or so, and I've had a lot of satisfying moments with the game, but in the same way that War Machine feels really satisfying when you've built up his bunker and different things like that, Ironheart getting to that final form and just having a hand size of 6, I should have mentioned, hand size of 6 in that final hero form to do a whole bunch of stuff, do all this damage based on her ability, and be able to continually add progress counters and use her regular cards on top of that, and having a stat line of 3-2-3. I mean, everything across the board is wild with the final form. As soon as I got there, I took complete control of every game I was in, whether it was multiplayer or solo. Even if I didn't win, it just felt like it was only because I had fallen behind too early and I just wasn't able to fully catch up. But generally, if you're in a decent state and you get to this final form, you're likely going to find success because it is just such a strong form to be in. Okay, let's get into some of her actual cards here. The first one is her signature ally, which is Brawn, a 4-cost ally, 3 health, 2 thwart, 3 attack. While Brawn is exhausted, he gains resource, generate a mind resource, limit once per phase. Solid card, honestly, and it's very solid specifically for Ironheart. I mean, obviously because it's a signature ally. Having that mind resource is such a boon to be able to get those progress counters on to her hero form. And honestly, everything about Ironheart in those first 2 stages is just, you don't want to fall too far behind, but you want to get as many progress counters as you possibly can going. A turn spent without adding any progress counters is you falling way behind where you probably want to be in terms of tempo to get to that final form. So having Brawn out and guaranteeing you that mind resource for as long as he is, to constantly be able to add progress counters to Riri Williams on her alter ego side is just, it can't be understated how powerful that is. Like, you may feel tempted, or you may even use Brawn for, a single 3 attack or 2 single 3 attacks, but I often wasn't necessarily using Brawn as a blocker until I had gained all the progress counters I want or was able to level up, and then I was expending him in that way, unless I ran into a really tough situation, because that permanent mind resource in many situations is just too good to pass up, unless you have another way to gain the mind resource. Then of course he still has a great stat line and you can use him to block. But awesome ally. I really had a lot of use out of him. Then we've got a couple copies of Flyover. So Flyover is a 2-cost event. Hero action, remove 3 threat from a scheme and place 1 progress counter on Ironheart. 2 progress counters instead of this thwart removes the last threat from that scheme. This is one of your key cards to add progress counters. You obviously want to hit the 2 progress counters as much as possible, but I will say that in several situations I was just hitting the 1, and even so, removing 3 threat for 2 is not gonna, break down any, it's not super powerful, let's just put it that way, instead of me trying to come up with some clever metaphor right now. It's too early for that. It's like first thing on a Sunday, okay? But so even though the threat removal for the 2 isn't, gonna, I'm trying to do metaphor again. What am I doing? It's a decent stat line, but it's nothing, over the top compared to other ones we've seen. We've seen way more threat removal even for 1 than for 2. But I still used it because getting that progress counter does put the power level over the top, and in many situations you will get the 2 progress counters, and you can, especially with side schemes in play, it never was too tricky for me to organize my 2 heroes to say, I'm gonna have Ironheart go second so that more threat has been cleared off the side schemes, and she's able to clear it off and get the 2 progress counters. I was reliably able to hit that, and obviously adding 2 progress counters for single card use is a huge deal. That's 1/3 of the way through a level up, and that is a really big deal for Ironheart specifically. Then we've got 3 copies of a Photon Beam, which is the attack version of what we just saw. This is a 2-cost event to deal 4 damage to an enemy and place 1 progress counter, but 2 if that attack defeats the enemy. So again, what you're looking at here is minions specifically. If you're in a scenario where there's no minions or you're getting really unlucky with minions coming out, you're likely just going to hit that one progress counter. You'd really have to just be getting it between villain stages, which is obviously a lot more rare and tough to do. But I will say all the games I played, having minions that was never really a problem. And there was always a minion that had 4 or less health that Ironheart was able to finish off and get the 2 progress counters. This was honestly more reliable than the flyover version, even though flyover wasn't too bad to hit. I was way more reliably able to hit Photon Beam, and because there's 3 copies, I even had turns where I was able to get 2 Photon Beams out, and next thing you know, I've added 4 progress counters in a single turn, or even 3 progress counters in a single turn. That's a huge deal for Ironheart. Again, to power forward to that final form, but even if you're in the final form, every progress counter is also 2 damage. So you could look at this as 4 damage, and then the 2 progress counters gives you another 4 damage. So you're ending up spreading out 8 damage for 2, if you look at it that way in the final form. This is a really good card that only gets better as it goes on, which is really interesting. I love that they found a way to continually incorporate the progress counters and not find that these cards, lose value as your hero powers up. They stay powerful, they stay with a purpose, and they're always getting you damage, which is awesome. All right, we got 2 copies of New and Improved. This is a 3-cost event that says hero action, choose X different options where X is equal to Ironheart's version number. So if you're in final form, you'll do all 3. If you're in the first form, you only get to choose one of these. The options are search your deck for an Ironheart card and add it to your hand. Number 2 is give Ironheart a tough status card, and number 3 is ready Ironheart. I never used this when I was in the first form. It was never worth it for 3. There was always something better for me to do. I'm not saying that those situations may not arrive where it just makes sense for you to grab a tough status card or ready Ironheart, but in general, I never had a single situation arrive. So in those situations, it was just being used as a mind resource. But keep in mind, a mind resource, super important to be able to add progress counters, so that wasn't too big of a deal. As soon as we started hitting 2, I definitely used it at 2 at least once. I can't remember if I used it more than once at 2, but even just being able to get a tough status card and ready Ironheart for 3 was sometimes worth it. But I will say that at 3, I almost use this every time it was in my hand, because that diversity of getting an Ironheart card specifically that you want, getting a tough status card, and readying Ironheart, who now has a really crazy stat line and inner final form, it just always made sense. I mean, readying Ironheart could be the difference between 3 threat removal and 6, and getting 6 on a single turn just from using basic thwart is really good, let alone also having that tough status card to protect you going into the villain phase, and getting an Ironheart card, which is usually really powerful. I would say, again, you're using this a lot as the game goes on. In the early stages, likely just being used as a mind resource, but again, you're looking for those anyway, so it's actually not too big of a deal that it's just being used as a resource card at that point. Then we've got Sector Scan. This is also a 3-cost event. Reduce the cost to play Sector Scan by X, where X is equal to Ironheart's version number, which means that this can be free when you're in her final form. Hero action until the end of the round, you may look at the top card of the encounter deck at any time. So, going into a card that costs 3 that can be free, you automatically think this is going to be overpowered. Luckily, the ability isn't anything that's going to be earth-shattering. It's basically just going to facilitate and help you stay alive and plan your turns better, which after you've spent the entire game reaching her final form and now are super powerful, the last thing you want is a nasty encounter card to sort of surprise you and have you lose when you're actually completely in the right situation to overtake the villain at that point when you're in the final phase. So having Sector Scan come out for free and be able to look at that next card if you're like, hey, can I go into the villain phase low on health? If maybe I'm at 2 health, but I can do so much damage and I want to stay in hero form, I need to look at that top card of the encounter deck to give me an idea of what boost icons are coming up, or whatever the case, or what encounter cards coming up. It can be really useful when it's free. I never used it once when it costs stuff, and that's not to say you shouldn't. Like, it costing 1, absolutely, there might be times you want to use it, but it was just never something that there was always something better for me to do in my hand, the games I had for when it was in my hand. So again, that's just me, but at a cost of free, it's really hard to argue that it's a really solid card to save you from some nasty situations. All right, then we've got 2 copies of Stroke of Genius. Very important card here. It's a resource card that gives you a mind resource response. After you spend this card, place 1 progress counter on your identity and draw 1 card. So not only is this being spent as a mind resource, which is super important. Again, mind resources on the alter ego side give you a progress counter. This is giving you an additional progress counter and drawing you back up a card to keep your turn going longer and potentially facilitate you doing more stuff to add progress counters or damage or whatever. amazing card for this deck specifically. You might look at it and say, oh, it's just a resource card that gives you 1 mind resource. But that ability and the fact of how important mind resources are, and the fact that it, will essentially turn that 1 progress counter into 2 on her alter ego ability. I use this constantly. It constantly allowed me to get to next levels of her level up process quicker by having these in my hand. There was never a time I drew it that I was disappointed. There was something for me to do with it. I'm spending resources anyways, and now I'm just getting additional progress counters for doing something I would do anyways. And I'm getting the card draw. It's honestly a phenomenal card. Don't sleep on it. It's one of the key cards in her hero cards. Then we've got Ronnie Williams. Ronnie Williams is a 1-cost support. Alter Ego action, exhaust Ronnie Williams and choose to either heal 2 damage from Riri Williams or place 1 progress counter on Riri Williams. Really great card again. The healing 2 damage is a great alternate to have on there to say that normally you have a recovery of 3. You compare that now with this. Use both cards, recover 5, really get back into form before you go back to hero form. But again, the progress counter, the additional progress counter being added for free, it's really hard to overstate, how important that is in getting this out early. If you get this out early, the fact that now every time you go into alter ego form, you have the potential to add a progress counter from Riri Williams and another free progress counter from this. Again, these cards, getting them out early is just going to make you get to that final stage quicker, and it's hard for me to explain how much more powerful Ironheart is in that final form, especially if you reach it at a point when you're already in good shape. I had one game where I was able to speed to the final form. Everything sort of worked my way, and I just felt so overpowered for the rest of the game without really many downsides or detriments. I was just in such control. The only thing I had to really manage was not getting too greedy and making sure I still went to alter ego sometimes to heal. But again, Ronnie Williams coming out early is going to just facilitate more whenever you go to alter ego form. It's a great card. And then we've got Tony Stark A.I. 2-cost support, action, exhaust Tony Stark A.I. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, discard the other. This is not an alter ego action. You can use it in your hero form as well. So, a lot of cards we've seen like this, you have to be an alter ego to use them, which is just, it's not like a huge downside, but it just makes it so that you have to be a little bit more careful, or you have to plan a little bit more when you're going to use them. You can't just constantly get card draw. This is the fact that you're able to use it any time, and you're not just drawing 1 card, you're drawing 2 and keeping 1. Gives you choice. It gives you the ability to sort of plan out your next, or what you want to do with it this turn better, because you're not just getting a random card, you're getting the choice of it. And getting an additional card in any hero is really, really good, let alone one who's looking for specifically mind resources or specifically cards that give progress counters. You want to be cycling through your deck to see more of those cards, and Tony Stark A.I. is letting you do that. Really solid card. Can't really say much negative about it. Even the cost at 2 is really solid for it, and having that choice is just really big. All right, then we have Photon Blasters. 2-cost upgrade, you get +2 hit points, exhaust Photon Blasters, deal damage to an enemy equal to Ironheart's version number. We're going to see the threat version of this coming out next. These cards are like so good, but again, they're so good when you reach a version 3. They're good up to that point as well, maybe not so much at the first version, but in that final stage, being able to just do 3 damage guaranteed every single turn, and this has been boosting your hit points for survivability by it being out as well, means that even if you get this out early and you're in version 1, you're not thinking, oh, like that, do I want to spend 2 resources just for an extra 1 damage in the meantime, or do I want to spend this as a resource and then wait until I'm in a later version number to play it? The extra 2 hit points, even though it's just 2 hit points, it really helps your survivability to get to that final stage and not have to worry about your health as much. It's especially when you pair it with the next card we're going to look at, you can have a total of +4 hit points. It's really just such a boon to be able to help you get to version 3, which is pretty much the entire point of what you're doing with Ironheart in the first place. So really good card, and in stage 3 specifically, having that guaranteed 3 damage every round is going to be something you just absolutely love. And like I said, we have Propulsion Jets, same basic card. The only difference is exhausted to remove threat from a scheme equal to the version number instead of doing damage. Again, I prefer the attack version, but I also know that if you're playing solo and you're not playing in a deck that has a lot of threat removal, guaranteed 3 threat removal every turn just by using this card is super powerful, and it's really going to help. Both these cards are going to facilitate so much in solo play, just having that flexibility in version 3. There's so many reasons you're going to feel super overpowered when you're in version 3, and the most successful game I had was when I had both these cards out. I was in version 3 really early. I am getting progress counters to do extra damage on my hero card. On top of that, I'm getting this guaranteed threat removal and damage. You just feel like every turn, even if you fell a little bit behind on what the villain did, you turn it around in an instant because there's so much flexibility in all the cards you have, what your kit looks like. There's so much you can do. You have extra survivability with the hit points. Such important cards, and when you get them out, you're just going to feel so safe in everything that you're doing. All right, those are the hero cards. We're now looking at the leadership cards, and there are some really good ones in here. It's no secret the leadership is not my favorite aspect, but some really exciting cards are nonetheless, and they work really well with this base deck. So the first one is Cloud9. It's an ally, 3-cost ally, 3 health, 1 thwart, 1 attack. She's a champion. Hero action, exhaust Cloud9, choose a player. Until the end of the phase, each aerial character that player controls gets +1 thwart. So Ironheart in her hero form does have aerial, I believe, across all the forms, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, maybe not. No, just the final form. Oh, final 2 forms, sorry. So as long as you're in form 2 or 3, you're going to have aerial. You might have some other aerial characters in play, but specifically, obviously, you want it to be hit with your hero. It is just 1 thwart, and Cloud9. So the reason this is good as well is because Cloud9 can do 1 thwart on her own, but it's going to give her consequential damage. Essentially, you're now trading the ability to exhaust Cloud9 to give yourself that additional thwart without having to take any consequential damage, which is now a perpetual way to add to your thwart and your threat removal, what you're doing there. On top of that, there are some other cards we're going to get to that boosting your base stats will facilitate you doing more damage or more threat removal across other cards. So Cloud9 really synergizes with a lot of what's going on in this deck. It's not, an overpowered ally. It's not one that every time I played it, I felt like the tide was turning, but it is one that anytime it was out, I did feel safe and comforted knowing what was Cloud9 was helping me do. But it's one that I also had no problem saying, I'm just going to use it for the mind resource, which is obviously super important, and not feel too bad that I didn't play the ally. So decent card all around. Then we have Falcon, Joaquin Torres version, 4 cost, 3 health, also a champion, 1 thwart, 2 attack. Hero response: after Falcon attacks or thwarts, spend an energy resource to ready another champion character you control. Again, we're getting a bunch of champion allies. We have a whole bunch of facilitation with champion. There's a lot of targets that this is going to be able to hit, but even Ironheart specifically, especially when you've hit stage 2 and 3, her base stats are super, super strong. Readying her and getting another turn out of her could mean, again, turning 3 threat removal into 6, or turning, 2 attack into 4, or after you defended for 3, being able to ready and still do some more with Ironheart. Really powerful target in Ironheart specifically to have Falcon in your Ironheart deck. Obviously, there's going to be other targets as well, and it makes it, Falcon not just feel like it's like one of those allies that's just built specifically for this deck comes in. There's tons of facilitation that it can do across other champions, but specifically, what a deck to have Falcon debut in, because I actually had so many moments where Falcon being able to ready Ironheart just ended up adding so much damage and threat removal to stuff I was already doing. So, pretty decent card. It is a little bit expensive. You're not always going to want to play it. There's too many times where I just could not justify playing a 4-cost ally that, in the term, or the ability also says you have to have an energy resource, so it wasn't even a guaranteed thing I'm getting for 4, and the stat line wasn't that good. So, if you're not in that final phase, if you're not able to really get the full mileage out of getting that extra ready, or you don't have an ally that having the extra ready is really important, you're probably not going to justify playing Falcon for that cost necessarily. But in that final phase, when you're already so powerful and spending 4 resources is a little bit easier for you, you have the 6-card hand, I think you're going to be playing it a lot more. Then we have Patriot. So Patriot is a 3-cost ally, 4 health, 2 thwart, 1 attack, but 2 consequential damage on the thwart. Hero response: after Patriot enters play, choose a champion character. That character gets +1 to each of its basic powers till end of round. Really solid card. Again, it's much more affordable at 3 compared to, actually much more affordable, 1 resource more affordable, which can make, I guess, all the difference in Marvel Champions sometimes. Then Falcon, getting 1 to your entire stat line is really, really good, especially when we get into some of the other leadership cards here. That could mean a lot more than just getting, an additional attack or additional thwart, especially if you're able to ready Ironheart in additional times to get more mileage out of her there, because she already has, say, like base 3 thwart. If this turns into 4 and you're able to get a 4 threat removal, ready her, do another 4 threat removal, I mean, that's 8 in a turn. You could pretty much clear most scenario or side schemes or main schemes or whatever's gotten out of control in that instance. So really, really solid card. Even though there's the 2 consequential damage on the 2 thwart, I think I you can use it for sure right before you block or something, but in general, the reason you're playing Patriot is specifically for that, you know, trigger when he enters play. The rest is just sort of gravy on top of that. At least that's the way I kind of looked at it. But overall, I think that out of the 3 allies, that's for sure my favorite and the one that I use the most reliably out of all the games that I played. All right, we have 3 copies of Go All Out. This is a really good card. So the 2-cost event requirement is you have to play at least one of those to be an energy resource. Hero action, exhaust your hero, deal damage to an enemy equal to the total value of your hero's thwart, attack, and defense. Now again, Ironheart in her final form has a really crazy stat line. I mean, it's 3-2-3, so that's 8 across there, which means you're exhausting her and doing 8 damage for 2. In Marvel Champions, because I play so much solo, whenever an aspect that isn't, you know, if you're not playing aggression, if another aspect is able to find reliable ways to do heavy damage, they're really good. If you're not playing justice and you can find a card that in one of the other aspects that's going to reliably allow you to remove a lot of threat, really good. Because in solo play, you don't have anyone else to rely on necessarily to sort of pick up that slack or fill that void, that niche that your hero's not filling. Go All Out is now a great leadership option, especially for heroes that have these great stat lines like Ironheart, to say, you know, I can do other stuff, whether it be clearing threat or whether it be, you know, just keeping the board under control, whatever, and then also do a bunch of damage. But in Ironheart specifically, it's less about survivability. It's more about, I'm already doing crazy damage output at that point with the progress counters, with my basic stat line, and now on top of that, for 2 with Go All Out, I'm doing an additional up to 8 damage. I mean, it's a really, really good card. You're not restricted to just doing this to minions. You can do it to the villain. 8 damage to the villain for 2 is nothing to sneeze at. The requirement's not that hard to hit. There will be the odd time that you don't hit it, but overall, I never really had a moment where I'm like, I really want to play Go All Out, but I have no way to do it. There's usually some way that you can figure out to do it. So awesome card. That's my type of leadership card, the ones that turn leadership into, you know, more of an aggressive attack only approach, which is, you know, sort of my the way I enjoy playing Marvel Champions. So yeah, really, really good card. And now that kind of leads us into Push Ahead, which is the threat removal version. So this costs more. It's 3 cost. The requirement is a mind resource, but the hero action is exhaust your hero, remove threat from a scheme equal to the total of your hero's thwart, attack, and defense. So same thing, but for threat removal, it is more expensive. I don't think it's quite as good as Go All Out, but again, being able to remove 8 threat for 3, at minimum, if you're in that final form, is such a big deal, because if anything, you could leave the main scheme for a while and say, I'm going to let this get out of control. That's okay. If you know you're going to draw a push ahead, or if you have a push ahead that you're holding on to spend the 3 resources to essentially clear an entire main scheme or get rid of an entire side scheme that's getting out of control, is so reliable, so easy, makes things so easy to be able to allow you to do other things with Ironheart and focus on damage output in other ways, and have this one single card get things under control. Solid card. I still prefer Go All Out, but it is obviously Push Ahead still is a really good card. Then we have Morale Boost. Morale Boost is a 1-cost event. Choose a hero. Until the end of the round, that hero gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, +1 defense. This Morale Boost is a fantastic card in conjunction with Push Ahead or Go All Out. It's a little bit harder to do it with Push Ahead because that's 4 resources total now, and both of these 2 cards in your hand, so you essentially have to use your whole 6-card hand to do that. It's a little bit easier in Go All Out, and I've done that multiple times in my test plays with Morale Boost and Go All Out, and getting an additional 1 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense is adding 3 to your damage output now. So instead of doing 8 damage, you're now doing, or in her final form, you're doing 11 damage, let alone that those base stats are boost, and you can also use Ironheart's base stats. So this is where Ironheart really starts to snowball. If you're able to have a turn where you use Morale Boost and Go All Out, and she's in her final form, that one pairing of cards does 11 damage. On top of that, you've now gained an extra attack that you can use her base attack. That's an extra 3. That's 14 damage. That's 14 damage that you're able to do reliably without having to really, you know, it's not like you're having to like get all these puzzle pieces in place to do it. You just have to be in final form and draw 2 of your leadership cards that you have 3 copies of each. Even if you just draw one of them 8 damage reliably, and then do another 8 damage in your next turn by drawing another Go All Out, like, she starts to snowball like crazy. And a lot of these leadership cards feel like they were specifically built for Ironheart. They're going to work in other situations, but her stat line is just so powerful in that final form that when you get there, it's really hard to feel like you're not in control of the game, which is such a satisfying feeling for a hero that's meant to be built up that way. It's one of the reasons I love playing Iron Man. It's one of the reasons I also enjoy playing Ironheart. Then we have R&D Facility. 3-cost support requirement. 2 mind resources need to be played. Exhaust R&D Facility with the hero action and remove 1 of those research counters from it. Choose a friendly character and play that character gets +1 thwart, +1 attack to the end of the phase. Cost is steep. Requirement is steep on top of that. This is not an easy card to play. And there's been times that I wanted to play it, but it just never made sense for me to try to figure out a way to do so. However, it being in play and being able to boost your attack and your thwart, again, with the cards we just talked about with her stat line already being good, obviously it's a really powerful card in that respect. It's just, it was hard for me to always justify getting out. You know, you think, is this a card you want to get out early? Probably not, because in the early stages you don't necessarily need to boost these stats. A lot of what you're doing is you know, building up progress counters. Like, I'm not saying it won't help, but you almost want to wait to use the charges until they're going to get more mileage. So in the early stages you're using it as probably its mind resource, because that's a really important resource for you. And then in the later stages you can put it out, but you're gonna, depending where the game is at that point, if you've already gotten close to winning, you might be starting to weigh, you know, do I spend 4 cards essentially to play this right now to get that boost in stats, or is there something else I can do to finish off the game with these resources, or do I have it under control enough that now I don't need R&D Facility? It falls in a weird spot that I didn't always feel like was beneficial to play. That being said, when I had it in play and I'm getting these guaranteed boosts to my stats that are affecting, you know, cards that also need those stats to give more damage and threat removal, I loved having it out. It's just sometimes you have to weigh whether you want to spend the resources to play it. All right, let's get into the basic cards. We've got a couple allies here. The first one is Snowguard. I really like this ally. 4 cost ally, 3 health, 0 thwart, and 0 attack. But the response is after Snowguard enters play, place up to 3 shift counters here. While the shift counters here are equal to X, she gets, and I should, before I even say these options, I'm going to say you don't. It's not like they snowball on you. If you put all 3 counters, you get all 3 of these options. It's you're only getting one of these options no matter what you choose. You're essentially choosing which of these options you want when Snowguard enters play. You only get one of them. So you either get to choose that she gets +3 attack and overkill, or she gets +3 thwart and aerial, or she gets +5 hit points and retaliate 1. I love this card. I honestly, you know, it's a steep, allies are always a little bit steep when they hit 4 cost and higher. You have to really have the situation to be able to play it, or have extra cards to generate resources out. But the flexibility on Snowguard to say, I need an attacker who can do multiple big hits. I need threat removal because, you know, I'm doing something else. I need something to take care of these schemes. Or I just need a really reliable blocker that now has 8 health. I don't care about doing any attacks. It also retaliates on top of that. Like, having that flexibility, it's hard to state how important that is, because Snowguard can adjust to almost any situation you find yourself in. There's some allies that, you know, they're great allies, but if this board state looks like this, or what you're doing right now is this, suddenly that ally is just a dead card in your hand, or just a resource, even though it could have the potential to be powerful. You're not finding the use out of it. Snowguard now fits into every niche. Do you need attack? Do you need threat removal? Do you need a blocker? You likely need one of them no matter what the situation is. If you are okay paying the 4 resources, there's nothing else you need to be doing with your hand, you're always going to get something good out of Snowguard. And to me, that is just such a solid ally that will see a lot of play because of that, because flexibility can be so important in card games, especially if you're playing solo and you have to be adjusting on the fly to so many different things, because you don't have someone else to sort of like say, oh, I'm handling threat removal, or oh, I'm handling, you know, protecting us or whatever. Snowguard in solo, I think, is going to be really, really good. Then we've got Vivian. Vivian is I should have mentioned, Snowguard's a champion, Vivian's a champion as well, so we're getting a lot more champion allies. 2 cost ally, 2 health, 2 thwart, 1 attack. Hero response after Vivian enters, I should have said 2 consequential damage on that 2 thwart. After Vivian enters play, choose an attachment, non-elite minion, or non-permanent side scheme until end of the round to treat that card's printed text box as if it were blank except for the traits. Situational card. I think this is a card you're going to specifically deck build when you have, you know, whether, I mean, the minion for sure, there's minion text boxes you want to ignore, but I think that this is going to be more so something you deck build when you are dealing with someone that has a lot of attachments that are nasty and are, you know, taking up too many of your resources to get rid of, or you're dealing with a lot of side schemes and, you know, maybe you're playing with a hero that doesn't have a lot of threat removal, so you need a way to sort of mitigate some of that without having to say, I just have to now turn my entire focus into removing this threat. Vivian is definitely not going to be used in every situation. She is situational in that regard, but I think for a 2 cost ally that can also be a chump blocker and negate one of these things, it's definitely one that'll see play against certain villains or scenarios. It might just not be like a universal include, but who knows? Maybe you find that you know, every deck needs a 2 cost chump blocker, and just having that additional, you know, way to now negate something else that's going on, keep you safe, is worth it enough to say I'm doing that and blocking with this. It's possible. I just don't know that in my game, like I had Vivian come out and I didn't often play her. There's other things I want to do in Ironheart specifically. So that's what I'm basing it off of. It is possible that over time, you know, we find more use for Vivian. Then we've got Go for Champions, 3-cost event, a max 1 per deck. You only get 1 copy of this. Play only if your identity has the champion trait. Hero action, each champion character in play cannot take damage until the end of the round. Crazy powerful card. Again, if specifically you're playing with 2 heroes like I was playing with Nova and Ironheart, and I had allies in play that were champions, to say that every single champion character that's in play, which is both heroes and all those allies, cannot take damage until the end of the round, not the phase, that does include the villain's turn as well, you're completely protected. Like, sure, you're spending a lot of cards, or sorry, a lot of cards, resources to be able to play this, so, you know, how much else are you doing your turn to keep you safe? But if you know the villain's gonna have a strong turn, or has, you know, an attachment that's gonna add a bunch of damage to them or something, or if you are able to spend your turn doing this, but then the other character is able to spend their turn, you know, going all out offensive, knowing they're now protected because of this, it is just such a really powerful card, and I use it in any game that I drew it in the late game. I ended up using it to say I want to have an all-out turn with at least one of my heroes, and then next turn be able to do the same thing and feel protected for, you know, the in between there. Sometimes I was able to just finish off the game by saying, okay, I'm playing Go for Champions, I'm doing everything I possibly can, I'm not caring what happens on the villain's turn, and then I'm going back to my turn, I'm going all out again, and that was enough to finish off the final stage of the villain. So really powerful card, not always going to be used, you know, not likely going to be used in the early game very often, but as a finisher, as a way to just sort of you know, turn the board state in your favor, obviously really good. Then we've got 3 copies of Ingenuity. Ingenuity is specifically great in Ironheart. 2-cost upgrade, play only if your identity has the Genius trait, which Ronnie Williams does, but that means you can't play this when you're in hero form, because I don't believe that our hero cards, they don't have the Genius traits, so you've got to play this in Alter Ego. That being said, it is exhausted to get a mind resource, which for Riri Williams specifically means you're now always 100% of the time going to have that mind resource available to get the progress counters. Any game that I got this out in the first couple turns of the game was a game that I had way more success with, because I had a guaranteed way to get her to that level 6, even if I wasn't drawing the cards I wanted or struggling in other regards. Having those guaranteed mind resources is such a big deal. It's one of the reasons I said Brawn was really good. This is now an even more reliable way to get that, because it's only costs 2. Like, again, there's the restriction with the Genius trait, but if you're able to have Brawn and this in play, you're going to be really, really happy camper getting her to her final phase. So let's go into the obligation. The obligation is a minor setback. Give to the Riri Williams player, remove 1 progress counter from your identity, then discard this card. If no progress counter was removed this way, deal yourself 1 face down encounter card, then shuffle this card into the encounter deck. So, interesting obligation. There's no way to remove it from the game, which we normally see in obligations. This is not going away from the game. It is just removing a single progress counter, but again, any kind of setback to your progress sucks with Riri Williams. Like, you might just think, oh, it's 1 counter, but you know, every counter counts. That could be the difference between like you getting into that form this turn or next turn. And an entire turn can be a big deal, especially getting out of phase 1 when you have a 4-card hand size into phase 2 when you feel like your hand size is now more regular. So it is a minor setback, but that minor setback, especially if you're trying it multiple times, can really, really suck. Dealing yourself that face down encounter card is just sort of, you know, a way to not allow you to have, you know, get off the hook by not having progress counters. If you just flip to the next level, you're still going to get that encounter card, so it just keeps things, you know, I guess fair and balanced in making you suffer a little bit extra. Okay, then we got Lucia von Bardas, which is the Nemesis minion. 2 scheme, 1 attack, 4 health. When Lucia has a tough status card, she gets +1 scheme and +1 attack, which means she'd be a 3/2 in stats. Forced response after the villain phase ends, give Lucia a tough status card. So every villain phase is going to, at the end of it, is going to give, I guess, that Lucia survives through, up through, is going to give her a tough status card that you're then going to have to deal with on your turn. And if you don't get rid of it on her, if you choose to just leave that tough status card on, her stats are going to be boosted. But now that means you're going to have to spend extra resources to get rid of her, because you're going to have to do an attack to get rid of the tough status card, then do an attack to hopefully finish her off with that 1 attack. So, you know, sometimes you have minions in play and you think, oh, I'll leave them for a little bit. You're now at least compelled to do this nothing attack that just gets rid of the tough status card just to get her stat line back down. So it's more annoying than it is, you know, overly powerful, but annoying enough that if you don't deal with it, suddenly it is a really powerful card. Then we've got Rule by Force, which is the side scheme. While Lucia is in play, this card gains a hazard icon. While Lucia is not in play, this card gains an acceleration icon. Super interesting card. I like that, we often see side schemes in different cards that pair with the Nemesis minion that say specifically that Nemesis minion needs to be in play. Having this one say, this happens if she's in play, this happens if she's not in play. You're never getting off the hook that way. But, it's... either one's bad. You might, in different situations, say, I'd rather the hazard icon or I'd rather the acceleration icon. But regardless, you're never going to want either one. And I like that no matter what, you're getting punished in some way or another by the side scheme. I say I like that. I don't like it in the moment, but I like that it's, a powerful card used against you as one of these cards that's going to come out with Shadows in the past. Then we've got Cyborg Tech. It's an attachment attached to the minion with the most traits. Interesting way to do that. If you cannot, this card gains Surge. Attached minion gets +3 hit points and retaliate 1. And there's also and the +1 attack is the base, I think, for this upgrade as well. The boost is deal this card to yourself as a face down encounter card. So one way or another, this card's going to come out. +3 hit points and one retaliate can really, really suck, especially on a minion that's really pesky or say a really annoying minion that the offset is that it has low health and it's easy to deal with. Suddenly it's now not easy to deal with and you're getting retaliated against when you attack. Again, a really annoying card that actually is pretty powerful against you if you get it onto the wrong target. So, maybe not quite as bad on some that are going to get eliminated with one hit anyways. But again, there's going to be those moments where it just attaches to the absolute wrong enemy and you're just saying, oh my God, this has made a bad situation worse. And I think that's where it's going to really, flourish. And then we've got 2 copies of Political Retribution. So Political Retribution says, when revealed, it's a treachery. If Lucia is in play, she schemes. If a Rule by Force is in play, place 3 threat on it. If neither is in play, this card gains Surge. So again, one of those situational cards where it has something for every single situation. Obviously, if Lucy's in play, she's going to scheme against you, which is base 2 unless she has a tough status card. It's going to be 3. And then obviously, if you have Rule by Force in play, which is the side scheme, you're also going to get 3 threat added onto that, which is going to keep that in play longer, which the acceleration icon or the hazard icon is now going to be a problem for you longer. It's not the worst treachery I've seen. It's one that's going to still be annoying when it comes up, but we've seen some treacheries that, can be devastating when they come out. I think this one's manageable, and again, because the only penalty to having neither of those in play is just Surge. We've seen Surge in other cards in that way. It's not a big deal. So I think that it's a better treachery card compared to some other ones in terms of the power level being lower, but not quite as interesting as some of the other ones that we've seen. All right. Time to get into the cards that are not part of the deck, but are the additional player cards you can use, as well as the additional encounter set that is included in this deck. First thing we have is a Bombshell. And I should have mentioned this is one of the reasons I really like the Ironheart pack specifically. Is I like when we get more allies than we need, and one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of wondered or were mentioning coming into this line of Nova and Ironheart is we're not really doing a champions line. Like we're doing the Spider-Verse line, the Web Warriors. We're going into X-Men now, we know. So like, where do champions sit? How are we going to get more champions to play with? So what do? They gave us 3 allies across all aspects that are all champions, and now things you can consider no matter what aspects you play. And they give us 3 additional allies on top of that. This is a really solid pack if you love allies. This is the pack to get if you want to be playing champions, because you get these additional champions. I think it's just a really solid inclusion. First one is an Aggression Ally, 4 cost, 3 health, 2 thwart, 3 attack, 2 consequential damage on the thwart. Play only if your identity has a champion trait. On the attack for 3, divide damage from Bombshell's attack among each enemy as evenly as possible. So even though she can do 3 attack with a single swing, it is going to have to be divided amongst whatever enemies. You can't choose not to do that. That could be a great thing in some situations. It could be exactly what you want, and it could be a not great thing if you really wanted to take down something specifically, and now you're having to split that damage. So again, situational card. I think in some situations Bombshell is absolutely worth her 4 cost, and in other situations I don't think you're going to really be able to justify playing her. Then we've got Wasp, Nadia Van Dyne, 2 cost, 3 health, 2 thwart, 1 attack, 2 consequential damage on the thwart again. Play only if your identity has the champion trait. Wasp ignores the Guardian, Patrol, and Crisis icons and keywords. Again, 2 cost allies with 3 health are just going to be baseline decent because of their potential to block for that cost. Everything else on this card is very situational. If you're not playing a scenario, we just talked about this with one of the heroes that's coming in, Shadowcat, that's coming in the X-Men Mutant Genesis pack. ignoring guard, patrol, and crisis can be really, really good when those are out. If they're not out, basically she has no ability. It's just a 2-cost ally for 3 health. So you kind of have to weigh, you know, which scenario are you playing this in, and are you going to be able to get that ability to have use enough to include that in your deck and justify including that in your deck? That's the question you're going to ask yourself if you're, you know, when you're deck building with that card. And then we've got Pinpoint, 2-cost ally, 2 health, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 consequential damage on the attack. Play only if your identity has the champion trait. Hero interrupt when a player card would be placed into a discard pile from play. Exhaust Pinpoint, shuffle that card to the owner's deck instead. I really like this card. It's one of those cards that you're not going to see the benefits immediately. You're going to see them over time. But when the fact that it's taking, like, Pinpoint's not taking any damage to this. So as long as you want to keep Pinpoint out and keep him safe, or her safe, sorry. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this hero, and the name is also not completely obvious. If it's like Karesha Gupta, I think this is a female, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the character. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But regardless, being able to keep Pinpoint in play and protect them, and then be able to just constantly get player cards back into your deck. Yes, they're being shuffled into your deck. You're not getting them immediately, but if your decks are low, if these are some of your really powerful cards, this could mean, you know, drawing that card multiple turns in a row because you keep shuffling it back in. So really strong potential here, and because I play protection so much, that's obviously the one that excites me the most. And then lastly, we've got the encounter set. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each of these cards because it's even though I included it in my games, I wasn't seeing every single card. They weren't, you know, I don't have a full breakdown of me having dealt with every one of these cards, like, you know, 3 times or something substantial. So we're going to just talk about my experience with them. The first one is Feedback Loop. This is, again, this whole thing is around Zzzax, which, you know, honestly, I'm going to start with Zzzax instead, and then we'll go on to the other cards. So we'll start with Zzzax the Minion. 2 scheme, 2 attack, 4 health. Zzzax gets plus X attack and plus X hit points, where X is equal to the total number of energy resources on cards the engaged player controls. Boost if you have at least 2 energy resources in your hand. It puts Zzzax into play engaged with you. So everything about this is obviously to do with whether you're holding energy resources. I think when you build a scenario specifically, it only really makes sense to include this if you're playing a hero that has a bunch of energy resources and you're trying to make the scenario tougher for you. If you're playing a hero who's often not going to have energy resources, or it's not going to come into play a lot, sure, you can include this, but really at that point, why are you? Or why include an easy encounter set that you're going to feel like you're not playing to its full potential? At that point, you're not challenging yourself with the game, and you're not thematically enjoying the cards the way they're meant to be. So I think this is the type of encounter set you include when you're like playing Captain Marvel and you want to make things a little bit more difficult for yourself. You include this, and it's sort of playing it on this additional difficulty level is kind of the way I look at it. Then we've got Feedback Loop. Side scheme, when revealed, each player must place threat here equal to the total number of energy resources in their hand and on cards they control. Again, this could be a whole lot depending on the hero that you're playing, and it gives you an acceleration token on there. So the idea is that there's an acceleration token now in play that you're going to have a hard time getting rid of if you have a bunch of these energy resources in play that you control. And if you don't, it's going to be a really simple card to deal with really nothing flashy. Then we've got 2 copies of Haywire. Attachment attached to your identity. Treat the printed resource of each card in your hand as if it were an energy resource. Choose to either discard a card you control with a printed resource or printed energy resource, or take 2 indirect damage to discard this card. So you might be asking, okay, you said that, you know, you only want to include this with heroes that have energy resource, or a lot of them, but like this card makes it so that any situation is now difficult. And while that's true, the way to get rid of this card is so easy, in my opinion. Like, just to either discard a card you control of your choice, not even random, with a printed energy resource, or just take 2 damage. Sure, there's gonna be times where, you know, you don't want to do either one of those, but in general, even just taking 2 damage is not, in my opinion, the situations I had was such an easy thing to deal with that, you know, I almost would have preferred if this was a really, really hard card to get rid of, or had to stay in play permanently for a while or whatever, because then it would make Zzzax way more difficult of an encounter set, even with heroes who don't focus on energy resources. Maybe I'm being too sadistic saying I want this to be harder, but that was just my thought on it. Then we have Air Static, which is an environment card. Force Interrupt, when the villain phase begins, deal 2 indirect damage to each player with an energy resource in their hand and or on a card they control, which is pretty nasty. Hero action, choose to either discard a card you control with a printed energy resource or take 2 indirect damage to discard this card. So this environment staying in play much the same way that Haywire is until you take the 2 damage or discard one of those cards. Not too hard to get rid of this card, honestly, but it is pretty cool ability where every single time the villain phase begins, the static, the energy, and the air is dealing you damage. The thematics of it, at least, are very cool. And then lastly, we have Zzap. Zzap is a treachery card. Take indirect damage equal to the total number of energy resources in your hand. If your identity was dealt 1 or fewer damage, gain surge. I like that there's a way to say, oh, you only have 1 damage or 1 of these in your hand, or you have 0. You're not off the hook, and now this is surge into something else. You're still gonna have to deal with another card. That's a smart thing that they included to make it, not a card that can have these fluctuating power levels where it's really difficult or then really easy to deal with. And that is the Ironheart pack. If you haven't been able to tell based on the way I've been talking about it, I actually really, really love this pack. Not only is it a super, super fun hero to play, if you're at all interested in making champions deck and playing with champions, this is one of the most important decks to get because it's giving you a champion ally across every single aspect. 3 for leadership. I think they were all champions. At the very least, 2 of them were. I think they all were, though. But then you're also getting a protection, an aggression, and a justice ally. They're all champions in the bonus cards as well. And Ironheart is just a super fun hero pack. One of my favorite hero packs from recent memory that has come out. Definitely a hero that is playing towards the people who already like Iron Man because of that idea of building up your hero. It's super fun to build up Ironheart, and they nailed it again with once you've actually built the character up, the power level is so strong that it's really hard to not feel super great playing Ironheart. So I love this hero pack. It's definitely my favorite of the 2 that were released, Ironheart and Nova. Still like Nova, but Ironheart to me is the clear winner. That's just my opinion. So let me know in the comments what you thought of Ironheart. Do you share my enthusiasm? Did you not like Ironheart as much? Or are there any things that I mentioned here that you felt like I should have stressed more? You want to talk about more? Did I get something wrong? Let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, keep an eye out for Nova. I'm going to be doing a Nova pack review in the next couple days as well. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time.